Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be. This is By Hook or By Needles, and I am Sam. And as you may see, I am wearing my completed Hooker versus Hooker top that I have made for myself. It's very short. It's a very cropped top with a square sort of neck. It had to be in pink, blue, and green. I'm not a lover of green, so I've only used the green very limitedly. But yeah, I'm quite happy with the way it's turned out. But that's not what we're here for today. We are here to learn cable knitting. This is the lesson for today. I'm going to show you how we work cables for, I want to say beginners. I think I'll put it up as a beginner tutorial, but it can also be classed as knitting for knitters because not every knitter knows how to do cables. So I'm going to put it under beginners because it is going to be very simple, just showing you this cable. I'm not going to show you any other intricate sort of cables, just this one. Okay, so I'll just have to change the camera angle and I'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Strawny. Did you leave a comment so we can have a little chat? That would be very nice. Thank you. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Okay, I'm back. So, what do we need? I'll get rid of all my notey, rubbishy things. To make cables. Well, you need your knitting needles and your yarn, obviously. But, this is a worsted 10-ply 4-weight, what else is it called? 10-ply worsted 4-weight yarn. I think that's all the names it's got. Aran as well. It's basically, yeah, 10-ply. I've already said that. Using 5.5, if you can see that, millimeter US 9 higher. I think these are bamboo DPNs. I'm only using DPNs just because they're nice and short and they're easy for me to work with. I could just as easily be using longer straight needles with an end on them, or using circular needles. I just find if I'm doing a tutorial, these are just handier and easier. Okay, so we also need, or do we, a cable needle. Now this is a cable needle which is got a little loop on it. Some of them have bends. I've got a bent one somewhere. But you know, as per usual, I don't know where it is. I mean, you know, finding anything in my place is, you know, I'm just lucky to find yarn and needles and hooks. Anyway, this is so that they don't slip off. So these are really good for beginners because when you pick up the stitches that you're moving or shifting left or right, the stitches go in there and they just sort of, this hangs down as you're working and it just prevents your stitches from falling off. But you do not need to go out and purchase special cable needles like this. You could just as easily find double-pointed needles that you might have in any size and use those. Now these are long, so they're not always very convenient to use because of their length, but you can get away with using these, and more often than not, I actually do use DPNs for cable needles. I used to before I found these. So you can use DPNs, or in a pinch, you can just use a normal stoppered knitting needle. Now the reason why these have 2 points, as you can see, a point there and a point there, and DPNs or cable needles. See, a cable needle is exactly the same as this DPN, except for it's just a lot shorter, so it's easier to manage, and it would have a point at each end. Now, when we get to that stage, I'm going to explain why they have a point at each end, but I'm also going to show you why you don't need to have a point at each end. So, we're going to use this yarn here, and I am going to cast on, how many do I think I need? I need, let's say 8, 10, 12, 12, 13, 12, 14, 16, 19. Let's go 19. That'll be a nice, width. And I will show you a cable with 8 stitches. Now, I think as I explained in this one, on either side of the cable, there are usually pearl stitches. And that's for, a few reasons. It helps the cable stand out, but it also will help prevent any curling and that sort of thing. So what I'm doing is I'm casting on 19. 8 of those stitches will be for my cable. I think there was 8 here too. Hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, there's only 6 there. That's okay. I've done 8 for the cable, 2 on either side of the cable for pearl stitches, and then 2 on either side of that for knit stitches, and then I've added 3 for my perfect edges, because we all know how I like my perfect edges. Okay, so let's go back to adding on some stitches, and we got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17, 18, 19. I'll get rid of that long end because I do not want a long end in my way. Okay. So, we're doing we are doing the perfect edges. So, in case you don't know what that means or what that is, I'll put a link in the description box below to it. But it's basically you slip your first stitch purlwise, and then you knit the next stitch, and that creates a second stitch. And that second stitch is used on the way back to knit 2 together. Okay, so I'm just going to knit 2, yep, purl 2, because I'm setting up for our cable, and then I'm going to knit 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, purl 2, knit 2, and then knit the last 2 together for our perfect edge. Okay, and that's like basically set up the pattern for us for our cable. So we're going to turn, and now we're going to work the stitches as we see them. So but what I mean by that is, take off the edges. You can see we've got a purl and a purl, a knit, purl, 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 8 purls, 2 knits, 2 purls. It's basically reverse of what we did previously. So you're purling the purl stitches, you're knitting the knit stitches. You can tell what stitch is your purl stitch because they have this little bump, and the knit stitches have the little V. Okay, so This is for our perfect edge. Now, the next stitch is a purl. As we know with our yarn over, if the next stitch is a purl, we yarn round needle to create that second stitch that we need for on our way back to knit 2 together. Then we purl 2. 1, 2. Now we can see we've got 2 knit. So we knit 2, put our yarn in back and knit 2. Then we come to our 8 purl. Now, how many rows you do of this before you actually start your cable will be determined by the pattern. But generally speaking, I mean, like I've seen patterns where, you know, you'll have ribbing because, you know, maybe it'd be a jumper or a cardigan or something, and you'll have ribbing, and then the very first row you work is a cable. And I've also seen patterns where they have you work 3 or 4 rows before you do your cable. I'm just going to do 2 rows like that, and we can see our setup is our edge stitch, 2 knit, 2 purl, 8 knit, 2 purl, 2 knit, and the 2 edges at the end. So I'm going to show you how we do this with each of these types of needles. Once again, if you are new, I recommend, and you have got any DPNs, I recommend a DPN, even though they're long and can be a bit tricky to use, or even a full-length needle. And I'll show you why that works instead of a double-ended needle. First, I'm going to show you how they would normally work cable stitches. Alright, so how cable stitches are normally worked. And as you know, I don't do things how they're normally done, so I try and do things easier than they're normally done. Okay, so we've got our 8 stitches, which are going to be our cable stitches. Depending on the effect you want, or you know what you're going for, you might have put the 4 stitches to the front or to the back. I'm going to put them to the front just so that you can see more easily what we're doing with our stitches. Okay, so we take the first 4 stitches, and this is called C8F. Okay, now why is it called 8 when you're only putting 4 on the cable needle? Because there's 8 stitches in total on the cable needle, or 8 stitches in total included in the cable. So how they would normally do it with a normal cable needle. Let's pretend this is a bit shorter. It's got 2 ends, and we're just going to put 4 stitches on this. And we leave them at the front. So we leave that just hanging at the front like that, and then we work the next 4 stitches as you normally would. So you just go 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, how most people work cable, they then put down the left needle and they pick up the cable needle, and then they slide those stitches to the end, and then they knit those 4. and then they go back to their working. As I say, I don't do things the way they are normally done. I try and do them what I consider easier. And I think if you're just starting out, sometimes having sort of 3 needles floating around, and I'm just going to undo these 4 stitches to show you how else you can do this. All right. So you've just knitted the 4 stitches at the back. Now you need to knit these 4 stitches. There's several ways you can handle this. My favorite way, and this is where this needle can be very useful, because you can pick up the stitches left to right, right to left, sorry. Okay, and then you just put them back on the correct needle, the left-hand needle, left to right. And that's how you can use a one point needle. I always put my stitches back onto the needle. I just find it easier, because then they're there and I'm working with just 2 needles, and I'm not sort of, struggling and juggling needles like you saw before. And then I just knit those 4 stitches. Similarly, if you were using this, you would have the 4 stitches down here. You could do 1 or 2 things. You can, you would pick them up on the shorter end, and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, slip. You would drop them. Actually, I may as well show you. Hang on. It's probably easier just to show you. So I'll unpick these again to show you. Hang on. Okay. So you would always pick up with the shorter end, and I'll show you why. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then when you were knitting these 4, this just hangs nice and loosely down there. It's not in your way. Your stitches aren't going to fall off, and it's quite easy to knit the next 4. The reason why you do the short end first is so that if you're not going to put the needles back on this hook, back on this needle, and you are going to knit straight from this, you've got a longer needle to knit from. So you put them on the short, you let them hang there, and then you knit them up from the long. But as we know, I like to do it the odd way, and so I would just probably pick them up on the long and put them back with the long. Okay, so that's the few ways that you can do it using a 1-pointed needle, a DPN, or a cable needle. Like I say, cable needles would be probably half the length of that, or just a U-shaped cable needle. They also have sort of cable needles with a little W. They look like a little W in them. Yeah, just depends what you can get hold of. With the plastic ones, I've had trouble with some roughness. That's a little bit rough there. So all I do is just get an emery board and then it smooths it right out. Emery boards are fantastic to have around, because my nails also tend to chip and crack, and then they pull on the yarn as well, which is annoying. So we knit 4. Purl 2, knit 2, and then we knit those last 2 together for a perfect edge. Now you can see what we've done. We've taken the first 4 stitches of that group of 8, we've brought them forward, left them hanging, we've knitted the next 4, and then we put the first 4 in the plate, back in place to where the second group of 4 would go. Then we would work just as we always have been, knitting the knit stitches and purling the purl stitches. Obviously we're still doing our perfect edging, so we need to just keep that in mind. And you will see better the crossover once we've done a few rows. Tension can be an issue here, especially if you're new to cables. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. When I turn the work around, I'll be able to show you better what I mean by that. 2 knit stitches. Okay, and then we come back. Now you can see here, this is a really long loop. And there's not a lot I can do to fix that. I just have to be aware of my tension when I am knitting those second 4 and when I'm carrying them across. Okay, that's what you've got to be aware of. You can always sort of put it to the back or, you know, hide it somehow like that until, you know, it's not as visible. It just takes practice. But you can see how that's quite loose. And that's just because I stuffed around undoing it and redoing it and undoing it and redoing it. So, we're going to do, I'm going to do a few rows off camera and come back and show you how to do it again. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I've knitted a few rows, and you can see that it's, oops, that should have been a knit stitch. I purled it. Never mind. I suppose I could show you how to fix that. No. Another time, maybe. Okay, so here we go. The first time we brought the stitches forward, and then we put them into the back, and they've switched over like that. And now you can do a number of things here. You can take the 4 stitches and you can put them to the back. Sorry, these 4 stitches. It's always the first stitches that move forward or back. It's never the second load. So if I wanted these ones to come back, I would make sure these ones move forward so they can come back, and it's just doing the same thing. So, you know, you would get the left-leaning swell, just like I had over here. Oops, no, I did have it the right way up. So this is what I've done here. I've gone, bring it forward and across, forward and across, and it gets you that consistent sort of over, under, up, over, under, up, and that's the way it goes. Under, up, and then it'll go over the next time. Similarly, you can do the opposite. You might want this to just go over and over again and over again. You can do that as well. Whatever the pattern, you know, you can look at a cable. If you like the look of it, it will tell you whether you're going over or under and that sort of thing. So, but what I'm going to show you here is putting these stitches to the back, and we will see a different way the cable will appear. Okay, so I'm going to get to the cable. And do you see how having these pearl strips on either side helps the cable sort of stand out better? Now, I'm going to use this one. I'm not going to put them on the short end. I'm going to put them on the long end because I'm going to put the stitches back onto the needle rather than working my stitches from the needle. So I'm going to just take these 4 off, and I'm going to do what they call a C8 B. It's going to go back. Okay, so it's gone behind the work. Back, behind, whatever. Then we're going to knit these 4. The next 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I'm going to take these stitches from the cable needle and I'm going to pop them onto my needle again. Now, a lot of people will watch this and say that's a wasted step. Yeah, look, you know, that's a valid point, but it's a step I prefer to do, and I always have done. And I actually thought it was the right way to do it until, I can't remember what I was watching. I saw something and I went, oh, they're knitting it from the cable needle. And in fact, most of the patterns do say knit from cable. But yeah, this is just the way I've always done it. So it's like one of those things. It's like riding a bike. You learn to ride a bike a certain way. Yeah, it doesn't mean you can ride a unicycle. Okay, so then I knit those. And then I finish the row as per usual. Now, there shouldn't be the big saggy issue I had the first time with the tension. It does have to stretch a certain amount to, you know, to move the whole thing. You will get a stitch that always does stretch a little bit. And I've got cat hair in here and all sorts. But now you can see the cable is coming back over. And this one's gone under again. Now this is a type of cable stitch where this one just weaves up and down. It weaves, you know, like a snake, and it's always on the top. You will get some cables that will be like that. Most of them alternate, like, you know, they will go under and up. But you will get cables that will do this as well. But that's how we handle putting the stitches to the back. And then we just work our row as usual. We purl the purl stitches and we knit the knit stitches. As I say, there are many, many different types of cable stitches with many different number of cable, with many different number of stitches in the cables. There are 2 cable stitches, 3 cable stitches, 8 cable stitches. They don't tend to have too many because then you're shifting too many stitches and then you really are going to have issues with like this, with gaps and that sort of thing, because you're going to be moving too many stitches across. But that's given me that sort of cable look. So it's just a matter when you get your pattern, and if it's got cables on it, you need to just perhaps do a little swatch like this to practice your cables. it will tell you in the legend or the abbreviation section how to actually do them. So usually, like I say, if there's 8 stitches in total in the cable section, it will say C8. It will all start C8. That's cable 8 stitches. And then it will tell you F for front or B for back. Now, sometimes they might have 4. It might say C4 back or C4 front when there's 8 stitches. It's just a different way of writing it, but it will tell you in the description. It will say, you know, place the next 4 stitches on a cable needle, then knit the next 4 stitches, then knit the stitches from the cable needle. So, you know, it will tell you whether you put in the stitches in the back or the front, and then it will tell you, you know, how many of the next stitches you're knitting or purl, usually knitting, and then that to knit the stitches on the cable. So whatever goes on the cable, whether it goes forward or back, they are knit second. Okay, you always knit the stitches that are next on the knitting needle next. And those stitches that are hanging on that cable needle are added after you do those stitches. But all the cable stitches are explained. There are some really intricate, what do you call them? Celtic knot cables out there. I've seen gorgeous little bunny rabbit cables out there where they make a little body of a bunny rabbit, and it actually has like cables that look like ears. And it's, you know, the bodies actually looks a little bit like, almost like this, where you've sort of got a bit of a body. And then they do another cable part here for the head, and then they do another cable sort of for the ears. I've seen owls done in cable, butterflies done in cable. I've actually done butterflies in cable. I wonder if I've still got that picture somewhere. Probably not. I don't know. Let me have a look. I'll show you if I can find it. Hang on. Okay, amazingly, I did find it. There are my cable butterflies that I knit on a blanket for my mother a long time ago. Here you can see some other different cables. Here are cables to look like flowers with little bubbles. And there's a very intricate cable design where, you know, you've got here you can sort of see these are backs. This one's a front because it's going over that way. That goes under. Yeah, and very intricate as they loop in and out. Then there's more leaves. Then there's more of this sort of middle section, and then there's butterflies again. Yeah. So, yeah, I did find it. But that's actually still on the needles, as you can see there, because I took this photo when I hadn't completed it. But yeah, so that's the sort of thing you can do with cables. And it's just a matter of reading whether you're going forward or back, and how frequently as well. You know, if you can see here, this one, it's a long time before you switch it around. Whereas these ones were being switched every few rows. And that gives you that tighter curl, or tighter twist, I should say. Whereas these are not as often as these. You can tell they're a little bit further apart. Yeah, and these ones just sort of cross over in between these ones. Yeah, it's you're really not limited with cables. what you can sort of design and create. So yeah, that's a blanket that I did I say many moons ago. I think I did it in 2021. So yeah, that's what you can do with just simple cables. Ha ha ha, she says. But yeah, I highly recommend a lifeline with these as well as with brioche, because I cannot tell you how many times I've stopped and looked at my work like I have advised you all do occasionally, and I've gone this way and this should have been over that way, and I go, oh, and then you've got to sort of like frog back and fix it all. Whereas if you've got a lifeline in there, it's just so much easier just to, pull it out. You're still having to re-knit it, but it's just easier to pick up your stitches and that sort of thing. With a lifeline though, before you put it in, you want to make sure that everything below is correct, because there's no point in having a lifeline if you put a lifeline in after you've made an error. So that's very simple 101 cables. It is just a matter of reading the panel, the legends, and looking at what specific cables they're asking you to do. I would start off with something really simple, like just a simple twist, but there's no reason why you can't move on to something like that blanket I've just shown you. It really, I know it looked complicated, but it really is just a matter of doing the cable when they tell you to do the cable. And I'm not trying to simplify or oversimplify it by saying that, but it really is just, it's like everything. It's just like baking a cake. You follow the recipe, you add the ingredients when it tells you to, the amount it tells you to, and you get a cake. Some people can do that and some people can't, but mostly if you do follow a pattern or a recipe, you will get the perfect cake, or something similar to a perfect cake at the end. Anyway, that's cables. I hope you enjoy it and give it a go. If not, hang around. I might try and do some more intricate cables at a later stage, but I do want to get onto doing some sort of Fair Isle and Intarsia as well before I sort of move on to anything else. There is brioche available on Knitting for Knitters playlist. I've done 1 color and 2 color brioche knitting. If you want to give that a go, by all means, pop over and have a look at that. I'll put those in the description box as well. But until next time, please learn from the past, think about the future, but always, always live for today. Have a great life. Have a great day, and a life. And I'll catch you next time. Bye for now.